All right, hello, professor and TAs. I'm gonna do a little bit. I'm gonna just show you guys how my stuff works. So just before we start, I just want to go back over the state diagram, just in case if I don't have the right one. But basically, we start at level 1. One of the call buttons is pressed and the door is closed, and then we transition, and then we move to the transitioning up state. So this is where the elevator is moving up the shaft. So from here, we can either we can leave the moving up state to the stop state if one of the stop buttons is pressed, stop 1 or stop 2, or we can or it reaches the second level, which is LS2, which is the level switch on the second level. Once we're at level 2, we move to the transitioning down state or the moving down state when one of the call buttons is pressed and the door is closed on the elevator shaft. And again, like the transition up state, we leave the transition down state when one of the stop buttons is pressed. We leave the transition down state when the limit switch for the first state is hit, so LS1. In the stop state, we leave the stop state. I took some liberty here and assumed that when one of the buttons is pressed, call 1 or call 2 being the button at the top and call 1 being the button on the bottom, that it would go to the level where the button was pressed instead of being able to send it to another level. So from the stop state, if the call button is pressed on the second level, the elevator goes to transitioning up. And if we move to, and if we're in the stop state and we press the call 1 button, we move to the transitioning down state. And then the final thing that I want to talk about before I get into the simulation, the only other type of liberty I took when I was doing this assignment, and that was the motor wiring. So in my ladder diagrams, you'll see that I only have 2 outputs. I have up and down, so for the transitioning up and transitioning down state. So the liberty that I took there was that I assumed that there would only be 2 relays controlling the motor, one being up and one being down, and each relay would be a normally open relay, and it would the up relay would have the counterclockwise, so phase ABC, and the other relay would connect phase ACB, so we're reversing one phase to reverse the motor, assuming it's a 3-phase induction or 3-phase permanent magnet motor. And then to ensure that we don't enter the up or the down state at the same time, thus shorting one of these phases, or 2 of the phases, phase C and phase B, I took some liberty and assumed that we could create a diode XOR for both of the outputs. And so we would implement this kind of circuit, so using a diode bridge and a PNP transistor with 2 resistors. So that would make sure that if the up or down signal coming from the PLC were to turn on at the same time, both up and down would go low. And this way, only one or the other can be on at one time. So yeah. Without further ado, we're going to look at my implementations. So the one other kind of academic liberty that I took here was that I assumed that you guys wanted to see the control implemented in ladder logic using state equations, which I've done here. These are my state equations converted to ladder logic. And then I also took that and converted it to a sequential flow chart. So yeah. All right, so I'm going to run my simulation. So as you can see here, I named all of my symbols. So right now we're in state 1, my state 1 being at the ground floor. So I'm going to close the door and send the elevator from floor 1. So now we're going to, you can see we're in state 2. My transition lights are moving up. These are my transition lights here. And you can see that the output is on. So now I'm going to hit the limit switch 2. So now we're at the second floor. So now I'm going to now that we're at the second floor, I'm going to, that limit switch is going to go off. And now I'm going to call it again from the first floor. We're in state 4, which is the transitioning down stage. So you can see that my output is now on here. And you can see that the transition lights are turning on. So I'm going to hit the limit switch 1 now. And since the door and the call button were pressed both at the same time, we're now back into the moving up stage. And now I'm going to hit the stop button. And now we've transitioned into state 5, so you can see none of the output is on. We're not transitioning. And now since I'm gonna let go of the stop button, let go of the limit switch, hit the call button, and now we're in the transitioning up stage. And now I'm going to hit the transitioning down stage. Limit switch 1. Now we're back into the stage 2 because I have both buttons still on. And then finally, I'm going to hit the stop button so you can see that stop works from both the transitioning up and the transitioning down states. Cool, so that was my ladder logic implementation. Now I'm going to look. All right, and now we're gonna look at the sequential flow chart. So in my, I'm just gonna show you guys again, just comparing the state diagram here. So my state 1 here is my level 1, so that's when we're at the ground floor. Level 2 is my transitioning up state. Level 3 is my level 2, or state 3 is when we're at level 2, and state 4 is the transitioning down state. And state 5 here is the stop state. So as you can see, we just transition in a straight circle, or we just transition from 1 to 4, unless the stop button is pressed when we're in state 4 or state 2, and we enter the stop state. And from the stop state, we enter either transitioning up or transitioning down, depending on which call button is pressed. So without further ado, we're going to simulate this again. So I'm just going to reset my variables here, click run. We start in the first state. So then next, I'm going to close the door, press the call button, release the call button, and now we're moving up. And then you can see that my lights, my transition lights are working with my single shot oscillator here. So back to the flow chart, we're gonna hit limit switch 2. So now we're at level 2. The door is still closed. I'm gonna bring it back. So now we're in the transitioning down state. And then finally, we're gonna hit limit switch 1. So that was a full ring around. So that was up to the second level and then down. So now I'm going to move us back. So we're at the first floor. The door is closed. I'm going to hit the call button. So now we're in the second state. And now I'm going to press the stop button. So now we're in the stop state 5, or state 5, which is the stop state. So now I'm going to press the call 1 button. So we're going to send it back down. So now we're in the transitioning down state. And now something that I forgot to do last time, you can see that my transition lights are working, as well as my output is on. And then finally, I'm just going to hit the stop button from the transitioning down state. And you can see that we entered the transitioning down state. And then finally, I'm going to hit the call 2 button. So we're sending it up. And I'm just going to show you guys that the lights are moving and my output is on. Cool. So that was it for my presentation. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. Thank you.